Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about four different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And I'm always scouring the globe looking for entrepreneurs doing things on the cutting edge in changing the world. So today we have a special guest, Dustin Riechmann, and he is on a mission-driven purpose to help entrepreneurs rapidly increase profits without paid ads using a partnership marketing system. So he's a strategic marketing coach, and it's going to be a really fascinating discussion about high ticket sales, business growth, and the partnership marketing system. So with that, I'm happy to welcome Dustin to the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's my pleasure. Really excited to be here and share a little of my story with your audience.
Yeah, I know we had connected through Podmatch and Podfest. And so tell people your story, your business, and what it does.
Oh, absolutely. So really quick, as I think a lot of our entrepreneurial journeys go, it's a little varied, but my professional career was actually as an engineer. So I come from that background, and I was a practicing civil engineering consultant for 15 years. But during the course of my career, I had a lot of side hustles and online businesses. The first of which was a company called Engaged Marriage, which grew out of marriage ministry my wife and I were doing. And so that brought me online in 2009. And then I got pulled into digital marketing as we were growing that business and doing courses and books and all those things. And then the digital marketing pulled me into digital marketing consulting and working for a bunch of other companies, which pulled me out of engineering. So I left engineering as a full-time endeavor in 2017 and have been full-time entrepreneur since. And so a couple key things that have happened in that journey. One of the clients I had as a marketing consultant was a local butcher shop, and the third generation owner of that butcher shop and myself hit it off. And he said, "Hey, I have this other product that I'd like to bring online called FireCreek Snacks." And so that I got pulled into that and Shopify and e-commerce and helped him grow that business, and then became a partner in the business. Ultimately did a lot of traveling and trade shows and learned like wholesale and a whole different part of the business world. And then COVID happened. And so in 2020, I was driving to a trade show and they said the trade show is canceled. And also half your marketing clients are now gone because the businesses were shut down. I was working with like dentists and real estate brokers, et cetera. So that brought me in the summer of 2020 onto my first podcast as a podcast guest. And that's really where my current business picks up. So I had been on about 50 podcasts, and we grew FireCreek Snacks to 7 figures with no paid ads. And that became kind of my calling card, and people started noticing what I was doing and started asking questions. And so, ultimately led to business coaching, marketing strategy, and now I run mastermind groups that are helping entrepreneurs use podcast guesting as a vehicle to grow their business, which is kind of crazy because before 2020, I had never been a business coach or had ever been on a podcast, and now it's like my full-time gig. So that's a little glimpse into why I'm so passionate about podcast guesting and other forms of partnership marketing.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. You and I followed the same kind of journey, and then kind of COVID kind of basically forced people to think differently, and some of them made it into full-time and new careers and new businesses. Kudos to you. Tell us, this is interesting. What is a partnership marketing system and how does it work?
Yeah, so the way I talk about partnership marketing is basically borrowing other people's audiences in a way that's really a win-win-win scenario. So podcast guesting would be one form of partnership marketing. So we're doing it right now, but basically the win for the brand, or me in this case, would be exposure to an audience that might be interested in what I have to say. They might become part of my community. They might want to buy a product from me at some point, but that's the win for me. Then the win for your audience is hopefully they're going to learn something today, a strategy, an inspirational story, something that really helps them. And then of course the win for you, Chris, as the host, is if I'm serving your audience well, then that's going to increase the downloads of your podcast, make you look good because you've got good guests. And so it's really a win-win-win. Like in that scenario, no one loses. We're all like the rising tides floating all our boats. And that's really what partnership marketing is in a nutshell. So podcast guesting is like a kind of a universal way to do it for an online business, but some other ideas to get their wheels turning For my FireCreek Snacks brand, a big one for us was subscription box placements. So the idea that we would donate or give at a discount product into a subscription box, say a ketogenic diet box. Well, we get a win and brand exposure to our ideal customer. The consumer gets a win because they get to find a cool new brand that they really like. And then the subscription box wins because it's feeding their economic model by getting new product. So there's lots of examples of this, but that's the main mindset is like, how can you get what you do in front of your target market for free, basically through education and through serving the end user in a fun, creative way.
Yeah, and that it's interesting. It's like basically bartering, and it's like so bartering social capital, relationship capital, and it's a fantastic way, especially social media. There's different ways of measuring capital, so it's not just financial, or there's now different types. So this is quite interesting, leveraging that type. One thing is the audiences, this has piqued some of their interest, and then but a lot of them are thinking, okay, I don't know anybody, or you have a relative stranger. How do you create successful win-win partnership?
Yeah, the key to it is leading with the win. So it's being giving and not self-serving. So if I'm thinking of, it could be even going all the way back to the FireCreek business partnership. That's like the ultimate partnership, right? As a business partnership, that's sort of the marriage version. Where most of the time we're more like dating. It's like we're borrowing each other's audiences, but it's not that serious. But even in a business partnership, I think it's instructive to talk about. With Ryan, my business partner, and he was paying me to market his brick and mortar butcher shops, and that was great. Then when he had this idea of taking this product online, I said, don't pay me. I can go create a Shopify store. I'll help you build an email list, and we'll start selling. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. If it does work, then let's figure out a way then for me to be compensated. So for him, it was like, sure, let's try this. It's only an upside. And for me, it was something I was wanting to learn how to do anyway. I really liked the product and believed in it. I knew it was going to work, but like that would be an example of I gave first. So even though he was a relative stranger, I didn't provide any risk, right? So it wasn't like there's no downside. And I think with, say, podcast guesting, for example, maybe you don't know anyone, but if you've been in business a little while, who your target market is. So where does your target market hang out? Where do they aggregate? What podcasts do they listen to? And then you identify that podcast, and then you reach out to the podcast host talking about how you can serve their audience. So again, you don't need to know the host. All the host cares about when they open this email is, does this person like a random weirdo from the internet, or do they actually know who I am? And you're going to know who they are because you're going to do a little research. And most importantly, are they interesting, and would they serve my audience? And if you can, in 3 to 5 bullet points, talk about what you can share with the audience that would be intriguing, fun, instructive, that they're going to say yes, right? So that I get that a lot. Like, well, what if I don't know anyone? Like, well, you don't need to know anyone personally, but you can still run this partnership marketing system if you have the right mindset.
And I love that. And it's basically growing your network and forming relationships. And it sounds like you can translate this sort of partnership marketing system, growing your network, branding yourself. What results have you seen by building and forming these relationships online?
Sure. It's a loaded question because there's been so many. So I joke to my real life friends and family, like most of the people I know are people I met through podcast guesting, either the host or fellow guests who I form a relationship with, or of course the audience who hears me and reaches out, and something about my story compels them, or they have a question, and then we connect on LinkedIn. It kind of takes different forms. But yeah, I mean, one real tangible example to kind of give people a financial outcome from doing this. So I was on a show called Brand Builders, but it's by a company called Snack Nation, and they're a big subscription box company. But they had a really cool podcast that dove deep into brands and like where origin of the brand, what's special about the brand, nitty gritty details about like packaging, ingredients, etc. So I was like, well, I wanted to be featured in the subscription box, but they were way out of our league. But I thought we had a cool story. So I pitched them and got us featured talking about the business story behind FireCreek Snacks and how it came about. And then it went well. And then we did get a small placement in their box, and we got good reviews. And that was kind of the end of it. Like, we donated the snacks. It was not a great financial reward initially, but it got us kind of our foot in the door. And so literally a year later, I talk a lot about planting seeds. So like you plant these different seeds and they will reap a harvest. You don't know if it's today, next year, 2 years from now, and how big the harvest will be. But in this case, there was a woman who reached out to me in January 2022 and said, "Hey, I'm the new category manager for salty snacks for Snack Nation. I have looked at the reviews of our previous products and you guys had really good reviews. I've tried the product. It's really good. And I went back to our Brand Builder podcast and I listened to all the stories of founders in our category. And I just love your story. What's your capacity?" And I was like, "Well, it's pretty high. Why?" And so she, long story short, she placed a purchase order for $550,000 worth of snack sticks that we would have never had a chance at had we not planted the seed of building that relationship through a podcast appearance.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like, just a simple message into such a large, order. It's amazing. It'd be interesting to see, like, go back on your to see which guests or which content is like the most biggest ROI.
That's one of them for us for sure.
And I love this idea where it's kind of like and it's almost like it's like basically intellectual capital, and then you're basically creating value from that. How do a lot of people, they're like, okay, interesting, but why do so many business owners get stuck and in this area? What's the key to them moving forward with confidence?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit. Like they don't realize that what they know and the learnings that they've acquired in running their business, for an example, if they want to get on and talk about what services they provide or the products they sell, to ourselves, it's no big deal, right? Because we've been living with it in our brain for years. But if you get out and actually like talk about where you came up with this idea, or like client success stories, or a personal story of how what you do, like why you do what you do, like the purpose behind what you do, just getting out and talking about where this came from and why it's important to you personally, like that's where people get stuck a lot of times. It's like, well, who wants to interview me? Like I don't have anything to say. I'm no one special. I'm not doing anything that unique. But actually you are, because you are you. Your story is yours alone. And even if you sell something that a lot of people sell, the reason you sell it, the way you came about selling it, the passion you have for selling it still has a lot of value. And so I think that's first and foremost, is don't discount just because you already know something doesn't mean that anyone listening couldn't get value from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a lot of this not only ties into not just business, but it talks about, for example, some entrepreneurs, they do high ticket sales, but one of the problems with high ticket sales is, they feel like the clients feel like they're being pressured or it's just too salesy. Tell us how, using this partnership marketing system, you can use 3 keys to low pressure, high ticket sales.
Yeah, well, so I think the key here is the format, right? So if I am running a Facebook ad and I'm interrupting you from you scrolling and looking at your friends and family, and then it comes over and it's like this too good to be true claim, and like your guard's immediately up because it's like someone's trying to sell me something. I didn't ask for this. Very different in a partnership marketing scenario. Again, podcast guesting is the easy example because people are listening to the show. They understand what podcast guesting is. But in this scenario, like maybe they're a physician or there's someone else who's looking for financial freedom, they're purposefully downloading this episode because they want to have some tool, some case study to follow. Like maybe they need a new marketing channel, and like partnership marketing seems really cool because it doesn't cost, there's no paid ads, and it's relational. It builds on the network. So I think if you have a high ticket offer, if you can simply be yourself, get and talk honest and transparently about what you do and why you do it and why you care, you will much more naturally attract people who would invest in you, because podcast guesting specifically as a strategy is really unique because it's 30 minutes oftentimes, sometimes 45 minutes of just you telling your story and connecting emotionally with the audience. And in marketing, we talk about know, like, and trust cycles. And so like the Facebook ad example, I don't know that person. They just interrupted me. I clicked over, and it's going to take a lot to get me to build up, not only to know them and like them, but to actually trust them. Whereas in a single interview, someone can really get to know what you're about and your ethos. And like, I really like resonate with this message, and they can know, like, and trust you in a single interview. And if you can shortcut that process and educate people in this format, this long form, like educational format, it can really have people be a warm prospect in one interaction, and rather than having like whatever the number is nowadays, 70 touch points where they have to see your ads and see your emails and hear you, see you on a billboard and like all these different things to like know, like, and trust you. Like you can actually accomplish that very quickly. So that's special about partnership marketing. And I think the other thing that's special is you really borrow authority, right? Like if a host has you on, they've screened you, they understand what you want to talk about, they've probably vetted your social media and your website to make sure you're not a crook or a spammer. And so if someone listens to a show on a regular basis and then someone has a guest on and they actually come across as authentic and they know what they're talking about, like, again, you've borrowed a credibility from the format, from the platform, from the host. And that really shortcuts the whole high ticket sales process too. So it no longer is high pressure. It's just, it's much more casual because the person listening chose to listen. They continue to listen. They believe and trust in the host. And so now they're much more primed to the offer that someone might have for them versus the traditional forms of digital marketing that we've all kind of grown to resent in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so well said. From a business owner standpoint, I know we're coming to the end of this session, but from a business owner standpoint, automation, because guesting takes a lot. You have to contact them, you have to appear, you have to wait, all this. So how do you create a steady flow of highly qualified leads for your B2B business, with this partnership marketing system?
Yeah, I think for one, you don't need nearly as many leads because again, the leads are warmer. You're not your funnel is a lot tighter if you think in terms of a sales funnel and traditional sales funnel. A lot of times, if you're bringing cold traffic into a funnel, there's a lot of drop off at every stage because people again aren't necessarily interested in what you do. But if they've encountered you in this partnership marketing format where it's a win-win-win, everyone's feeling good, there's great value being exchanged, and they get a chance to really know, like, and trust you. I think that's first and foremost is you just have a lot less drop off. The second thing I'm a huge advocate of is outsourcing a lot of the legwork of this. So like in a real quick snapshot, the framework I work through with people in our mastermind groups and other programs, it's 5 steps. It's 5 P's. I won't go through them in detail, but it's purpose, plan, pitch, perform, and profit. And purpose is why you're doing it. Plan is which shows you want to be on. Pitch is getting on them. And then perform is showing up and doing a good job. And then profit, of course, is leveraging each of these appearances to actually make the sales. Steps 2 and 3 in that process, which is the plan and the pitch, are very laborious. They're very repetitive. And so what I like to do is work with the entrepreneur, get them owning that and loving the kind of baseline target market and master pitch. And then we actually train a virtual assistant for them, and we place a virtual assistant with them so that the virtual assistant in 5 hours a week can actually be running steps 2 and 3 all the time. So the entrepreneur literally just shows up to the interview. They don't have to do a lot of the legwork any longer. And that's what makes this scalable, because podcast guesting, to your point, is a little labor intensive. There's a lot of outreach. There's a lot of thought that goes into that. But the great thing is when you set a system up the right way, someone else can do most of that legwork, and then you can just focus on the part that most of us like to do, which is talk about ourselves, talk about our business, and talk about the transformation we love to provide our clients.
Yeah, I love that. How can people contact you, reach out to you, follow you?
Absolutely. Simple is my home base, so you can get on there and shoot me an email if you guys have a question about anything I covered. If you're interested in some free resources, we have a lot of free resources on there about partnership marketing, podcast guesting, etc. And my other platform of choice is LinkedIn. So I post every day on LinkedIn, very active there. I'm the only Dustin Riechmann to my knowledge. It's Riech in the last name. If you put in Dustin and then Riech, we can definitely connect on LinkedIn, and would love to add people to the network there and continue this conversation.
Yeah. And for all the audience out there, let's thank Dustin for giving priceless wisdom about his experience. This is a really new way of marketing yourself and creating a brand, and it's very much simpler. If you use his tactics, you can save a lot of time, get exposure. Be sure to follow him on social. He's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, as well as his website. All these resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, let's thank Dustin for a fantastic podcast interview.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the time and the attention. It's been a lot of fun.